Hi, friends. Did you ever hear about a moment in history where a small group, outnumbered more than 3 to 1, stood firm with nothing but faith, courage, and unity, yet walked away with a victory that changed the world forever? Today, I want to take you back to one of the most powerful turning points in Islamic history, the Battle of Badr. Imagine this: 313 believers, many of them untrained, lightly equipped, and carrying only what they could find, facing an army of 1,000 warriors, fully armed, confident, and determined to crush the new Muslim community once and for all. Why did this happen? How did it begin? And how did these 313 men achieve a victory that is still remembered today as the Day of Criterion, the day truth triumphed over falsehood? Stay with me, because once you hear what happened step by step, every strategy, every turning point, every lesson, you'll understand why Badr is not just a battle. It's a story of faith, leadership, and destiny.
Chapter 1. From years of persecution to the migration to Medina. Before we reach the battlefield of Badr, we need to go back to where everything truly began. For more than 13 years in Mecca, the early Muslims faced harsh persecution from the Quraysh. Families were torn apart, believers were tortured, humiliated, and pressured to abandon their faith. Some were forced out of their homes, others lost their businesses, and many lived under constant threat. Yet, despite all these hardships, the message continued to grow and the community remained strong. But soon, staying in Mecca became impossible, and the Muslims were left with a single choice: to leave behind everything they knew. So, they migrated, quietly, secretly, and in small groups, to a new place called Yathrib, later known as Medina. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ made the migration himself, the city welcomed him with hope and love. There, the Muslims found safety, unity, and the chance to build a community based on justice and peace. But the Quraysh of Mecca were not ready to let them live in peace. They seized the Muslims' properties, threatened war, and continued to provoke them. What began as a search for safety would soon lead to one of the most defining battles in Islamic history: the Battle of Badr.
Chapter 2. The Quraysh Caravan and the Muslims' Initial Plan. Now that the Muslims were settled in Medina, something important happened. A huge Quraysh caravan led by Abu Sufyan was returning from Syria, carrying valuable goods that originally belonged to the Muslims before they were forced out of Mecca. When news of this caravan reached Medina, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ shared a simple plan with his companions: intercept the caravan, reclaim some of what was taken from them, and send a clear message that the Muslims would no longer remain silent against injustice. The goal was not to start a war, but to pressure the Quraysh economically and show that the Muslims were no longer weak or vulnerable. But things changed quickly. Abu Sufyan, always cautious, heard rumors that the Muslims were nearby. So he changed the caravan's route, sped up its journey, and sent a messenger racing back to Mecca with alarming news: Muhammad and his companions are coming for the caravan. The Quraysh reacted instantly. Instead of protecting the caravan, they gathered a massive army of 1,000 men to crush the Muslims completely. What began as a small strategic interception suddenly became the beginning of a major confrontation, one that neither side had fully planned, but both were now marching toward.
Chapter 3. Mecca responds. The Quraysh army marches out. Once the warning from Abu Sufyan reached Mecca, the entire city burst into action. The Quraysh leaders gathered quickly, furious and determined. They believed the Muslims in Medina were becoming a threat to their power, their trade, and their pride. So instead of sending a small protection force, they decided to send a full-scale army, 1,000 fighters, heavily armed, supported by cavalry, and equipped with war drums, banners, and supplies. To them, this was more than just protecting a caravan. It was a chance to crush the Muslim community once and for all and stop their growing influence. But here's something important. Even after hearing that the caravan had safely escaped, the Quraysh refused to turn back. Their leaders, especially Abu Jahl, pushed the army forward with arrogance and confidence. He believed that a grand victory would restore the pride of Makkah and send a clarifying message to every tribe in Arabia. What the Quraysh didn't know was that their decision to continue marching would lead them straight to an unexpected battlefield in a place called Badr, where the course of history was about to change.
Chapter 4. The Muslims' Council and the Decision to Stand Firm. Now, imagine this. The Muslims in Medina learned that a massive Quraysh army, over 3 times their number, was marching toward them. Many were afraid. Some even suggested retreating. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ called a council of his closest companions to discuss their next move. He asked them to speak honestly, to consider both courage and caution. After careful discussion, the Muslims decided that fleeing was not an option. They would face the Quraysh, not because they sought battle, but to protect their faith, their families, and the community they had built in Medina. The Prophet ﷺ reminded everyone of an important principle. Victory is not just about numbers, but about faith, discipline, and trust in Allah. Each companion pledged to stand firm, knowing that they were vastly outnumbered and lightly armed. They prepared themselves mentally and spiritually, not just physically. This decision to stand their ground, guided by courage and strategy, set the stage for one of the most defining moments in Islamic history, the Battle of Badr.
Chapter 5. Reaching Badr and Securing the Strategic Ground. The Muslims marched toward Badr, a desert valley with scarce water and rough terrain. Every step was heavy, but their hearts were full of determination. When they arrived, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ quickly assessed the land. He knew that controlling the wells and high ground would be key. Water was limited, and holding it would give them a strategic advantage over the Quraysh. The Muslims positioned themselves along the wells and hills, making sure the enemy could not easily reach their water supply. Even though they were outnumbered, this careful positioning would turn the environment into an ally. The companions worked together to prepare for the coming battle. They dug trenches, set guards, and organized their ranks under the Prophet's guidance. Every decision, every placement reflected both wisdom and faith. By nightfall, the Muslims were ready. They had fewer men, fewer weapons, but a strong strategy, unity, and trust. Badr, once a quiet desert valley, was now the stage for an epic confrontation, a place where courage, planning, and faith would decide the outcome of history. Chapter 6. The Night Before the Battle. Prayer, Preparation, and Patience. The night before Badr was filled with tension and hope. The Muslims could hear the distant movements of the Quraysh army, and yet they remained calm, guided by faith. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gathered his companions to pray, seeking guidance, protection, and strength from Allah. Many spent the night reciting the Quran and remembering that this battle was not just physical, it was a test of courage, unity, and trust in the Most High. In addition to prayer, the Muslims prepared in practical ways. They checked their weapons, organized their positions, and encouraged one another. The Prophet ﷺ reminded them that patience and perseverance were as important as bravery. Every companion understood that the next day could change their lives forever. And so they waited with hearts steady, knowing that faith and preparation together would be the key to overcoming the great challenge that dawn would bring.
Chapter 7. The Duels that marked the beginning of the fight. As dawn broke over Badr, the tension was palpable. Before the armies clashed fully, it was customary in Arab warfare to start with individual duels. Brave warriors from both sides stepped forward to challenge each other, testing courage and skill. Among the Muslims, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, and other companions faced the strongest Quraysh champions. Their victories in these duels not only boosted the morale of the Muslim army, but also sent a clear message. Though smaller in number, they were fearless and determined. These initial duels were more than just personal fights. They shaped the spirit of the entire battle. Every companion drew strength from the courage of others, and even those who were not fighting yet felt the resolve to stand firm. By the time the main confrontation began, the Muslims were united, confident, and ready. These duels demonstrated an important lesson. Bravery, skill, and faith can inspire an entire community, even against overwhelming odds.
Chapter 8. The Battle Unfolds. Discipline, Faith, and Tactical Leadership. Now the full battle had begun. The Quraysh army, confident in their numbers and weapons, charged forward, expecting an easy victory. But the Muslims, guided by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, held their ground with incredible discipline and unity. They fought not only with courage, but also with careful strategy, keeping their lines tight and protecting the wells in key positions. Every companion knew their role, and every movement was coordinated to maximize their smaller numbers. Faith played a central role in the battle. The Muslims repeatedly turned to Allah for strength, courage, and clarity amidst the chaos. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ led from the front, encouraging his companions and inspiring them to stay calm and focused. Even when the Quraysh pressed hard, the Muslims' tactical leadership and unwavering trust in Allah allowed them to turn the tide. Slowly but surely, the enemy began to falter, showing that strategy, unity, and faith together can overcome even the greatest odds.
Chapter 9. The Quraysh Collapse and the Muslims' Decisive Victory. As the battle continued, the strength and courage of the Muslims began to turn the tide. Despite being outnumbered, their discipline, faith, and strategic positioning allowed them to withstand the Quraysh attacks. Many Quraysh soldiers began to fall, their confidence shaken by the Muslims' resilience and unity. Key leaders of the Quraysh were defeated, and confusion spread through their ranks. What had started as a confident march toward an easy victory now turned into a retreat in chaos. By the end of the day, the Muslims achieved a decisive victory. Though they were few, their careful planning, bravery, and trust in Allah had overcome a far larger and better equipped enemy. The victory at Badr was more than a military success. It was a powerful symbol of hope and faith for the entire Muslim community. It proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, courage, strategy, and faith could change the course of history forever.
Chapter 10. The Aftermath of Badr and the Lasting Lessons. After the battle ended, the Muslims returned to Medina with hearts full of gratitude and awe. The victory at Badr was a turning point. It strengthened their faith, united the community, and earned the respect of many tribes across Arabia. The Quraysh, meanwhile, were shocked and humiliated. They realized that sheer numbers and wealth could not guarantee success, and that courage, strategy, and faith could defy all expectations. From Badr, we learn powerful lessons that go beyond the battlefield. First, faith and trust in Allah can guide people through even the toughest challenges. Second, planning, unity, and discipline are as important as bravery. And finally, courage in the face of overwhelming odds can inspire an entire community. The story of Badr reminds us that even when the situation seems impossible, determination, preparation, and belief in what is right can create extraordinary outcomes.
The Battle of Badr is not just a story of war. It is a story of faith, courage, and unity. A small group of believers facing overwhelming odds showed the world that discipline, strategy, and trust in Allah can overcome even the greatest challenges. The lessons from Badr remain timeless.
No matter how difficult a situation may seem, determination, preparation, and belief in what is right can lead to extraordinary outcomes. This is a story that inspires generations, reminding us that true victory comes from heart, mind, and faith together. And friends, if you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, English Bridge, and hit the notification bell. We have many more amazing and inspiring stories coming your way. Stories that will not only improve your English, but also take you through incredible moments of history. Stay curious, stay motivated, and let's continue exploring the world together.